So the mast height has several different attachments. So based on how much shoulder, elbow, and wrist function somebody has, there's several different supports that you can put on there. Everything attaches to the gyro, which is a 360-degree rotating piece that allows for full movement. From there, we have everything that's completely supportive, such as the forearm support, which would go on the gyro. So it allows the forearm, wrist, hand, everything to be supported. So if somebody just has shoulder movement, this might be a good one to start with. If you have somebody who has maybe really weak hand or maybe a lot of tone that you want to inhibit, this is a flat hand piece. You can add either right on to that forearm piece or the gyro alone, and it'll allow for more of a flat hand position instead of a functional curved position. And then you have the grip and release handle. So if you have somebody with emerging shoulder, elbow, wrist, and finger movement, this is a good one to try because, again, you can have that hand function incorporated. And then all the way to the very hardest, most challenging, the ball handle. So if somebody maybe has full movement, but you're just working on coordination or strength, this might be a nice one because they only have the handle to grip onto. All right, so here we're looking at a patient's graph over the last month, and it's documenting a few different things. The ones I want to show you are these three. So we have the percentage of smoothness, percentage of path efficiency, and percentage of direction accuracy. So smoothness is basically showing how coordinated the movements are between the targets. Path efficiency is showing how close to the direction between targets he's getting, and direction accuracy is showing where he's applying force and how close he is going into the movement to the target correctly. So as you can see, over the first 4 sessions, he improves with each training period for each one of those graphs. And then on the 5th session, I introduced a more challenging task. It was more of a 3-dimensional movement, something new to him, and that's why we see kind of the drop off. So there's that relearning curve happening here. So here's one of the treatment day reports for that same gentleman. It shows the treatment day number, date, time. It will track each exercise that he completes. It tracks what motion mode used, the repetitions, how many actual movements, and then from there, these are all extra details, kind of tracking the force or resistance. If he played a game, which he did, tracks the score and errors, and then over here we have the time. So for something like this, what we're really looking at is in how much of a treatment or actual robot training time and how many movements that they're getting. So not including the game here because it doesn't count repetitions. In the 3 exercises that he did prior to playing the game over a 9-minute period, he had 134 movements in just 9 minutes. And so this kind of lets us track how much training time and how much movements he's getting. And it also is great information for us to know because comparatively to a session where I might just be moving his arm or having him do something actively, this really documents how much more repetition and intensive practice he's getting in just a short period of time. So here we have opened one of our exercises. The exercise just happens to be called the forward reach, and this is in a 2-dimensional plane. The biggest thing we want to show you here are the motion modes. So on the Reo, we have 5 different options. The first one is guided. That is completely passive. So in the guided motion mode, the robot is actually taking 100% of the work. So any exercise or program that you choose, the robot will be guiding you completely through the movement. Following guided, we have 3 active assisted motion modes, starting with initiated. Initiated, the patient has to sit in the chair and whatever exercise they have pulled up, they have to initiate the movement actively on their own first towards the target before the robot will then kick in and help it the rest of the way. Step initiated, that one is very similar to initiated. However, throughout the movement, they need to continually reinitiate. So they might start a little bit, the robot helps, They start a little bit again, the robot kicks in, they got to do one more time, and the robot finally will take them all the way to the target. Then the next active assisted one we have is follow assist. That one we like to describe as bumper cars or bumper plates, like if you're bowling. So as she goes through the movement, the closer she is and more accurate she is to the line between each target, the easier it is for her. If she has a lot of ataxia or tone and she tries to push outside that path, the robot then will provide a lot more resistance, kind of giving her that feedback that that's not the right direction. And so the easier and closer she is to each target, the better and less resistance she has for the movement. And then finally, we have all the way to a fully active range of motion mode called free. So in that motion mode, within each exercise, the patient is doing all the movements on their own with no help from the robot. Digging a little further into each of these, we also have forces that we can apply. So whether you're in guided, initiated, step initiated, follow assist, or free, we can set resistance. So we have low, medium, or high. So within each one of these, we can also add a strengthening component. And then also on the grip and release handle itself, if we want to incorporate any hand function, squeezing and releasing, we can set the resistance to low, medium, or high, making them grasp or release stronger. So here we have Nicole set up in a forward reach program. So we're going to go ahead and show you how she would get sequenced through one of these exercises. So I'm going to go ahead and press play for her. And what you're seeing here is a very standard two-dimensional exercise. So this is her starting point here. And what she has to do is go from the green target to the red target. And she'll go back and forth until the red one turns green. Something to note here, this arrow that you're seeing, that is based on how much and where she's putting her resistance to the mast of the robot. So the goal here is to have the arrow pointing in the direction that she's moving. So it's another visual feedback for her, but it's also another thing that's getting documented as you saw on the graph. And this is another area where a therapist could cue or give reminders. You know, if you notice that the arrow is going in the opposite direction, maybe she's pushing or pulling away from the movement that she wants to be going to, she can be cued then to try to make that arrow match the direction of the target as much as possible. Within each exercise, I can pause at any time. I can increase or decrease the force, speed, and I can make these targets further away or closer to her without needing to completely start over and reassess her movements. And another great thing, since the robot is kind of taking the weight and force of her arm, I am free now, if she didn't need a lot of visual or cognitive cues, I am free now to do a little bit more manipulation. Let's say she needed a little bit more help or support at the shoulder. I can easily stand behind her here and help kind of guide her shoulder blade through the movement. So go ahead, Nicole, and push out towards that target. I can make sure that her shoulder blade back here is, gliding the way it would need to. I could make sure her shoulders supported, preventing subluxation or feeling for subluxation throughout each of her movements. Another thing that you'll see here, we have her supported in these straps. We have 2 on each side for the shoulders and for her trunk. So this is a really nice special chair that the ReoGo comes with. It'll prevent any compensatory movement. So let's say she really wanted to lean forward and flex. It allows her then to stay in the chair supported, just focusing on the movement of the arm versus trying to initiate and do the movement by cheating, more or less, using her trunk muscles. It's also very nice if you had somebody very acutely following a stroke, if they had a very flaccid arm still, maybe not a lot of trunk control. Having the trunk supports are nice because then it's a safety feature and it'll also support their balance. So now we are moving into a more three-dimensional exercise. And so as you can see, I have changed the view of the screen. So now instead of that bird's eye two-dimensional view, we are working more in a three-dimensional view. And the exercise that Nicole's completing is actually called functional reach, bringing a cup to the mouth. So she's starting at her starting point. This is simulating reaching out to a table or wherever to grab the cup. From there, she then brings the robot or simulated cup up to her mouth. So in a lot of these three-dimensional views, we can actually do a very functional based task. Also with the three-dimensional exercises, not only does she have to reach or get to a target, but she actually has to have some strength to now raise the mast height of the robot up. So she's using all of her shoulder muscles here, actually bringing the robot up. A couple other things we want to point out with this one. Most of these exercises that we're doing on the robot focus a lot on different shoulder or elbow movements. However, we can incorporate hand function by having what's called the confirm feature. So as you can see, she just reached for this target, and instead of turning red right away because she got to it, it's actually yellow. And when it turns yellow, what she needs to do is actually squeeze the grip and release handle for it to turn green. She'll then go to her next target, bringing that cup up to the mouth. That one will turn yellow, and she needs to confirm. So again, just showing how she reaches for the target. It should turn yellow, and in order for it to turn green, she squeezes, and then she can move on to the next target. Okay, so this next one, I have the mast height raised all the way up. Let's say somebody was, again, pretty acutely presenting after their stroke. Maybe they have, just some initiating movements emerging at their shoulder. Having the mast height risen all the way up like this with this type of handle takes the weight fully of her arm, again, decreasing the load on the therapist. So now we have one of our exercises that will focus just on the emerging movements of her shoulder, but also will allow us, when she gets out to an end range, if I want her to stretch or hold a position, she has to until I click the button using that confirm feature. So it brings her to the first point. Maybe she has a little bit of movement, so she initiates there. And then once she gets to the yellow here, let's say I want her stretching, reaching forward like this. Her arm will now stay here until I click that confirm feature. Let's say I want her to now be out a little bit further, again, providing a prolonged stretch. She will stay stretched until clicking the confirm feature. So if you have somebody who has a lot of active movement and some of the Reo exercises or sessions are getting too easy, you also have the options of doing these really awesome games. So there's a couple different options here. We'll just start her on this one here. So the games are really nice. They can be used not only for people with stroke, but let's say you have somebody with a brain injury who has a really hard time paying attention, or you have somebody with any visual perceptual deficits. You have the availability to open these games even if they don't have any arm dysfunction at all, and all these games are challenging in that way. So this is just one example of the bow game. She has to move the robot, line it up to the target, which is the balloon, and then just like a computer mouse, she's releasing the trigger to get the dart to pop the balloon. There's easy, medium, and hard, so you can change the cognitive level of each game and progress from there.